Hey everyone, my name is Ben Heisch, and today we are checking out this absolute monstrosity of a lens that is also maybe the most surprising lens in terms of quality that I've used in my entire life, and that is the TTArtisan 90mm f1.25. As we're looking at this, I mean, it's legitimately comical. This lens is over 1,000 grams. It is like 2 and almost a quarter pounds, something like that. It absolutely dwarfs a Leica M10 body. When you set it down, it actually rests on its own tripod foot. So, I mean, it is ridiculous. Like there's space under here. I don't know if you can see this, but there's space. And the thing about it though is you're getting a 90mm lens in a Leica M mount at f1.25. Now I want to be clear, TTArtisans did send me this lens, but there was never a, like, you have to make a video for this or anything. They just sent it to me, I picked it up and legitimately used it at every gig that I had for the rest of the summer. Now, if you follow the channel for a little bit, you probably have seen that I reviewed the TTArtisan's 75mm f1.25, but if we're being completely honest, this lens and that lens are like night and day, could not be further from each other. The TTArtisan 75 1.25 is like that dreamy, not really soft, whatever. And this lens, again, is the exact opposite. I was legitimately just floored by how good this lens is. It is shockingly sharp. I would say probably even sharper than my 80s version 90mm Summicron. I mean, it's enormous, but in terms of actual use and quality and everything, again, like my mind was legitimately blown at how good of an image came out of this thing. So first things first, let's just talk about the design, the size, all of that good stuff. Obviously, this is going to be the common refrain of this entire video of just like, it is freaking enormous. And by freaking enormous, actually just give me 1 second. Okay, so by enormous, here is one of my favorite lenses of all time. This is the Canon 85mm f1.2L. And when you put the two together, you see that, like, while it's ridiculous in size for a Leica M10, for a normal 85mm 1.25 equivalent, or 1.2 equivalent or so, on a full frame, you know, it's actually pretty decently comparable. And so you just see that there is just so much glass. I mean, it's huge, it's enormous. But what you get out of that, obviously, is that extra light gathering and all of the stuff that sort of, I guess, comes with that. So again, in terms of size, yes, it's crazy, but if you're looking at, you know, another comparable lens for the formats, you know, not too bad. Now, otherwise, in terms of build quality, this thing definitely is built well. The focus is dampened well. I think it would sort of have to be, considering how much glass you're moving here. That being said, you know, the styling and everything is great. Now, one of the things that you're obviously going to run into, and it is such a bummer, I feel like TTArtisan, TTArtisans, these companies need to just hire or find a way to start calibrating these lenses, because they are missing out on a very large market of Leica M photographers that don't shoot digital and only have film, and could definitely use some of these lenses as maybe secondary lenses or whatever. But again, Unless you have a Leica digital camera or have access to one, you are going to have to calibrate this. And so unfortunately, I cannot recommend this to anybody that doesn't have a Leica M digital camera that is able to calibrate it. Again, if you haven't watched any of my other videos, you rotate this little ring around and then you put it back on the camera, you see if it was in focus or not, and then you kind of just trial and error, unfortunately, until you get it right. Again, we have this tripod foot on the bottom, which is legitimately useful because once you're kind of going on the center of gravity here, not that I would ever be able to, you know, actually balance this thing, but the body weighs significantly less than all the rest of this glass. And so moving, you know, things to about here makes it a lot easier, especially for me where I use that dual camera strap from Holdfast. So it's been really, really nice actually to be able to just simply put one of the mounting points on this little tripod thing instead of putting on the body. Definitely has helped out. And if you really didn't like that for whatever reason, let's say, I don't know why you wouldn't like it that much, because you can also see that it's flush right here. But if you didn't want it, there are actually screws where you could take it off, but you know, just being able to put it down and stuff, I don't know. I feel like it's a really helpful feature. Another kind of cool design thing here is you obviously have this barrel is just kind of open here. And it does have this reversible lens shade, which I fidgeted on earlier, which makes this look absolutely ridiculous and absurd. But I will say that it's a good one. It has that felt kind of stuff on the inside. And sometimes that's really, really needed, especially when you're shooting more into the sun a little bit, because this thing does flare a little bit and kind of ghost and haze. One of the times I took it to a wedding and it was heavily backlit and I had too much going on to take the lens shade off, and maybe I forgot. I don't really remember, to be honest. But it showed up quite a bit where I probably should have been paying more attention to it. So it's definitely not a lens that most people are going to want to use without something like a Visiflex or something like that. But one of the things that I will mention at this point is that when I first got this lens, I put it on my Leica M adapter for the GFX, and it is so close to being an amazing, perfect lens for the system. Now, once you stick it on a medium format camera like this, it just seems like any normal lens and becomes just like part of a normal thing. And then having something like this, or you know, you could adapt it to an EOS R or a R6 or a Sony or whatever. I would definitely say that if you want something really unique and cool, this definitely could be something to look into. On the medium format side, it's definitely usable, but you are going to have to crop it in ever so slightly to get a more usable image most of the time. But one of the things that I actually did was to start, before I got more comfortable using this, I set up this custom button on the front of the GFX right here, and I used that to actually switch between 35mm mode. So you can change the custom functions here to switch between 35mm formats. So you can do that, and it switches to a normal 35mm sensor size, and then you can click out of it and it'll go back to that 44x33. So it was definitely a good way to use this, because then you have focus peaking and all that kind of stuff that ended up being super helpful. I do think it's a good lens to adapt to multiple formats, and it's even useful on the GFX. I wish it was a little bit bigger of an image circle so that it wouldn't, you know, go into the corners here, but it still works. So there are probably going to be people asking about that, so I figured I would at least reference it. Overall, in terms of design, feel, all that stuff, it's built like a tank. And if you gave me the Leica version, if you like blindfolded me and took off all the branding and all that kind of stuff, gave this to me and said, hey, this is Leica's, you know, $13,000, $14,000 lens, I would say, rock on. Yeah, totally believe you. And speaking of Leica's $14,000 lens it is, oddly enough, this is faster than that lens in terms of aperture as well. So I don't know exactly in terms of t-stops and stuff like that, how much actual light gathering this has, maybe above the Leica version. Now, speaking of fast lenses, that is going to be the reason you are going to be picking up this lens. There are plenty of other, 90mm Summicrons and other things that are much smaller and are much better to carry around, all that kind of stuff. If you are getting this lens, you're getting this lens because you want something that gives you that very, very, very shallow depth of field, all that extra light gathering, and it's going to give you the look and the light that you wouldn't be able to get with a smaller, more compact lens. So again, I legitimately think that the images out of this just speak for themselves. I was legitimately shocked at how well this performs. And for what my use case is as a wedding photographer, I think that the size and the image and everything is justified. And I've legitimately, since I have switched to Leica, this has been the one spot that has been, I guess, I feel like the hole in my lineup. I've always had an 85, and that has been my longer lens for speeches, for ceremony stuff, for those just close moments at a wedding, whether it's getting ready or something like that, where you want to pull back maybe a little bit and not be as up in people's faces, or you just want to zoom in and get close and focus more in on the emotion of what's happening. A longer focal length definitely does a good job with that. And now that I have this lens in my setup, it has legitimately just sort of been the first time where my, I guess, Leica wedding photography, elopement photography kit, and as far as all the way from 21 to now 90 has felt complete. So thanks so much for watching. If you are interested in more videos like this, I have just a ton of Leica M reviews of lenses and these cameras. I'm definitely gonna go over again another video soon going over my whole wedding kit, so that can definitely be helpful, and tune in for that. Subscribe if you aren't already. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below. Hit me with a thumbs up if you've made it this far, and I will see you on the next one.